Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us on our webinar today on proactive ways to prevent PPC spend disasters. So before we get started, I wanted to just go over a couple of bits, a bit of housekeeping really. Just a few points. First one being strange noises. So unfortunately, we are all still working from home a year on, and there may be some strange noises that pop up. So please try to ignore any kind of strange cat, dog, child sounds, anything like that. We'll just try and ignore it, move past it, and pretend it never happened. And the next bit, Q&A. So we do have a question and answer section. So it's about 15 minutes at the end of the webinar. The webinar will be around 30 minutes in terms of the presentation. And then, yes, we will have question and answer time at the end. Feel free to obviously throw in those questions throughout the webinar as well. And if we can, we'll try and get to a few of them throughout as well. And the last point is recording. This will be recorded and we will send it out to you guys. So if anyone has to kind of nip off to the toilet, grab a brew, whatever it might be, then you won't miss anything. We're going to obviously record this all and get it out to you as well. Now, for you troopers who stay till the end, there are a few resources that we're going to obviously send out to you guys as well. So just I'll run through these here. So we've got a exclusion list. So it's basically 60,000 bad placements to exclude in your Google Ads. They're also a resource for 102 free Google Ads scripts. Obviously, you're going to get a copy of this presentation today as well. And as mentioned before, we are going to record it and we will send out a recording to you all afterwards as well. Now, I just want to introduce our guest speakers today. So we have got Neil Andrew, who is the CEO and co-founder of PPC Protect. And then all the way from the US, we've also got Jon David, who is the co-founder of shape.io. How are we doing, gents? All good?
Good, yeah.
Yeah. Morning to you, Jon. I think obviously you're probably just waking up, aren't you?
Yep. It's mid-morning here in Oregon.
No doubt a beautiful sunny day again, just to make us jealous.
Actually, a few clouds out here today, so it's a little cloudier than normal in Bend.
Oh, that makes me feel a bit better. Neil, you well?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. A slight cough and a tickle, so apologies to anyone who hears me spluttering throughout. I'll try and mute if need be.
Okay, we'll bear that in mind. Okay, so just to kind of touch on what, in a nutshell, really, what we're going to be discussing today. So obviously it's how to prevent spend disasters. And we're going to be looking at, doing that by monitoring the following things with some free and existing resources. So we're going to look at performance irregularities, click fraud, budget overspending, and also, when you send traffic to broken and zero value pages as well. And as a bit of a Brucey bonus, I believe, Jon, you're going to share your biggest PPC spend disaster with us as well, which I'm hoping is going to be quite entertaining.
Was not entertaining at the time, for sure, but now looking back, hopefully everybody can pick up a lesson from it.
Good stuff. Yeah, look forward to that one then. Okay, so I want to, I suppose, kick things off really with a bit of a poll. So hopefully you guys will be willing to get involved in this, and you should see it any second. So we just want to know, do you work at an agency? Are you in-house? Are you freelance or elsewhere? I'll give it a few seconds or so. Got loads of answers coming through, which is great. Looks like we've got mainly agency as it stands, and then elsewhere, second close behind that. Okay, just give it a couple more seconds. I've got a few more people who haven't answered yet.
You might hear, of course, got my favorite woodpecker coming right now during this outside. If you hear it, that might be a strange noise.
Oh, nice. We'll listen out for that one.
Hopefully you're not picking it up.
Oh, there it is. I've got it, but it's not too bad. Okay. Don't worry, Jon.
Okay, good.
Cool. Right. Okay. So let me close that off for you. So 40% agency, 24% elsewhere. Great stuff. Thanks for that, guys. Right. Okay. So I am going to now pass you over to Jon. Jon, I'll leave this in your capable hands from here.
Yeah. So I think one of the things we're going to look at today is really unexpected changes. And one of the big things to preventing disasters is trying to prevent sort of unexpected or try to mitigate some of the performance changes you could see if there's a big change in the marketplace or big political announcement. I got a couple examples here. Pandemics, we saw greatly shift search traffic pretty quickly through different regions as it kind of moved through the world. One specific example from my past, so a little bit of my background, spent years as a PPC analyst, working at an agency in various capacities, from working directly with clients, working a little bit more behind the scenes, working in more management roles. And one of the agencies I worked with, our big vertical was self-storage. And back in 2013 or so, before I left to start working on Shape, we saw impressions were starting to rise across certain markets. We saw click-through rates were going down. And it was because of this horror movie that was coming out in the fall called Self-Storage, that had Eric Roberts in it and a few other B-list kind of actors now. But people were searching for the movie, where they could find it, where they could stream it. And we didn't have a lot of negative keywords at the time around movies because we had never seen that before in that vertical. And it took us a while to kind of diagnose through search query reports during that time that, it was this movie people were searching for. So that's kind of just one of those examples. And we've all seen that with, maybe a brand name that can hit on something that comes in the news, or a topic that maybe isn't exactly relevant, you weren't prepared for with your negative keywords. So really today too, a lot of the tools we're going to talk about is because you've got less insights into your search query report than ever before to maybe diagnose some of these things. So having tools or processes in place to kind of bubble them up to the surface as soon as possible so you can figure it out and address them is a big part of what we're looking for here. So if you want to flip to the next slide there, Mar. So a couple just quick ways to, we see there's a shift, there's a change. How do we start troubleshooting or look through it? The first place that I really start is looking through account notes. Maybe we've got multiple people with their hands on a PPC account and they had a conversation with the client that wanted to go a different direction, and they note that in whatever system you have. So first, it's helpful to have kind of a repository or a notes place where you're keeping not just, all that quantitative data about your customers, but qualitative in the conversations you're having with them. Another one is to quick check your change history. Were any settings changed, maybe by accident, when there was edits being made. My big PPC disaster we'll touch on later involves AdWords Editor and some automation challenges you could see there if you're not careful with updating and doing all your backups. Another quick place that we always check is, do you have like conflicting scripts or rules in place? A lot of PPC agencies now especially have PPC stacks with multiple tools. So maybe one rule put in place with your automated rule on AdWords is conflicting with a third-party platform trying to make a change. One thing we actually like to see our customers do here as a third-party platform is set up a unique MCC to link to each of these new platforms that has access to all your same accounts. But by tying kind of unique MCC login to a third party, it sort of gives you a built-in kind of secondary check on the change history, because any change history that pulls through into the ad network is going to be tied to that MCC, and it makes it easy to tell what third-party platform made that change. And that's kind of the last point here is go to your also go directly to the ad platforms. Maybe Google made a big change around some kind of targeting, or Facebook maybe has changed how they're spreading ads that could bump up sort of impressions for a certain ad type. So it is important to kind of stay in touch with the different ad networks blog to see if any changes there could be causing your irregularities. If you want to flip to the next one, Amar. So in the next few slides, we'll go over some specific automated rules and tutorials with links that you can go through to kind of work through your scripts. So, and the first one is, if you want to switch slides there, this is one I use all the time as an analyst and really recommend. And it's really just a basic, if spend for a campaign goes above a certain dollar amount and conversions are still at zero, either we need to look to decrease bids or pause the campaign until we can figure out what's going on. So this is a rule I used on a lot of campaigns, especially if I've got a good feel for the performance history and I know, hey, it's going to be really weird if we go, $500 or $600 and don't register a single conversion in this campaign. If that happens, I need to get an email alert about it and kind of check in as soon as possible. And this one is from Search Scientists. So I've got a link here in the slides that kind of goes through these next, if you want to flip to the next slide too, Amar. This one is also another one from Search Scientists that I really like. It's pretty similar, but it works more with CPA, and it looks at a time duration. So if your CPA rises above, maybe 2-3x what you've seen historically performance-wise, and you need to set it over a certain amount of days there, so it, maybe doesn't flag on one day. You have one bad day, and it was, then kind of mitigated over the rest of the week. A lot of times here, I'd set this for at least like a week in terms of duration to look at, depending on the volume of the campaign. But I do like these options because they give you the email alerts. We'll go over a couple cons later about these automated rules in terms of sometimes it can be an alert overload, and it's not a perfect system for, managing a lot of tasks. We see a lot of, if you're applying these kind of en masse across a lot of accounts, there's a lot of false positives or things that really aren't issues, but that are flagging just because you're applying this real broad rule to all your accounts. You want to flip to the next one there. And this one is more in the scripts realm. So if you're more familiar with JavaScript, you've followed Frederick Valleys, the optimizer. He puts out a lot of great scripts there. This link is to one specific one I really like because if you're familiar with scripts, it gives you a lot of dials to turn in terms of what you want alerted about. Are you running display campaigns and really more concerned about impressions? Are you looking at clicks? Do you have a certain CPA goal? You can really this is a super comprehensive script that you can really turn a lot of dials you might have in a PPC account to kind of check, okay, am I in my acceptable thresholds for these certain metrics across an account? And you can really easily kind of customize them for each client. So that's another one I really like.
Over to me now. Thanks, John.
You now.
So apologies about any coughing that you do here. So wanted to give a rundown of just quickly how click fraud can potentially impact campaigns from a spend disasters point of view, and give you the tools to be able to search and identify for any potential fraudulent or invalid activity in your account that might be costing you money. Probably going to end up putting myself out of a job here because I'm literally telling you how to do a simple version of this for free. So this is going to help you pick up the really basic sort of low-level, low-lying click fraud and just make those accounts more effective. So what we see is across all our data from our 2021 click fraud report, which there's a link for in here, and you'll have a copy of these slides later, is that 50% of internet traffic is non-human, and that costs just over $10.5 billion a year in PPC ad interactions. So there's a humongous amount of budget that is being lost to this automated activity, even when you think this might not necessarily be a problem that's impacting you. It's still worth checking for and seeing if that actually is the case. Some figures on the screen that you can see around how it infiltrates certain types of campaigns, comparing search, display, video. I think everyone expects video is going to be, particularly bad. So display is going to be particularly bad anyway, just because there's a financial incentive as well on that side to commit click fraud. So if you could go to the next slide, please.
Real quick on that one, Neil. Is that 50% a number you've seen kind of stay pretty steady over the last few years? Is it one that seems to be oscillating too much as mobile comes more into play or display gets more complicated?
Fairly steady. We see fluctuations. I think 2020 was our 2020 report was like 48%. I think it was 49% the year before that. So it's pretty steady around the 50% mark.
Got
it. So in terms of identifying click fraud, we really break it down into two specific types that you can quite easily look for in your account and see if you've been impacted. One of those is what we would call targeted or active click fraud. And that's when someone or something is targeting your account and it's racking up spend. You're using much more of your budget than you normally would be and not getting sales. You're not getting conversions. The easiest way to identify this is really simple. Just look at your impressions, your clicks, your CTR. If you see a big spike, like we see here in one of our customers, then the question you would be asking yourself is this fraud, or is this some change, like John said, in terms of maybe they've released a movie that has a very similar name to something that my client's offering? That could obviously cause the similar spikes as well. So it's just one thing to bear in mind while you're looking at it. What you can do is you can pull all that information as a CSV export out of Google Ads, and then put that into a pivot table if you know your way around Excel, calculate the average, and then just find out how much you're deviating from the average on a day-by-day basis. So if you see every Tuesday at 2:00, we're 50% above average, that might be something that's worth looking into and worth investigating a little bit more. If you could go to the next slide, please, Amar. So passive click fraud is the other side of that. So what we say with passive click fraud is it's not something that's specifically targeted at your account, at your campaigns, but it is a lower level of ongoing activity that in certain niches and certain verticals can cause quite significant budget losses and can cause quite a lot of spend to be racked up. Now, the easiest way to look for this is to make sure that Google Ads and Google Analytics are linked with each other, and then go into Google Analytics, jump into the sessions, the user explorer, and look for any unusual number of sessions. So we can see with this user that we've got on the screen, they have 47 sessions in total, a 47-minute duration in total, but all the recent sessions are 0 seconds. They're coming from display. It's not good quality traffic at all. And we can just dive into that a bit more to see, is this legitimate, or is this something that's ongoing that we don't want to be paying for? If you are familiar with BigQuery, it's fantastic to use for this kind of larger scale analysis. If you're not kind of familiar with large scale data analysis, it can be a bit daunting, but there are a lot of resources out there that you can read to figure out how to do it. Jump on to the next one. So another way we can look at this is identifying any sort of fraudulent activity from spend patterns. Now, this is the one that really jumps out most of the time, because you will be looking through your account, you'll see spend has increased. What is going on? We're not getting as many sales, as much revenue coming in. But interestingly, what we will often see is spend will go up, conversions will also go up. So you are making more conversions, you're getting more form fills or lead generation, but actually a lot of those would be spam. They'd be bot activity, they would be spam form fills. Now, this is where Google's automated bidding really falls short. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan of automated bidding in Google Ads. I think it's extremely powerful. But what they do in instances like this is we're essentially saying to Google, we're getting lots of conversions. If we have a maximized conversion strategy set, we're saying we want more of that. We want as many conversions as possible. And if we're getting lots of rubbish conversions, Google doesn't necessarily know that. All it's saying is, oh, conversion's great. Let's get more of these and more of these. And all we do is we put the ads in front of more and more invalid users, and that spend goes up and up and up. We get more conversions, but we're not actually making any leads. We're not making any sales, and we're wasting a whole lot of money. And then lastly, we would always say, if you look through these, identifying passive click fraud, targeted click fraud from spend, always go and confirm your suspicions. Now, you're not going to be able to dive really, really deep into this without some pretty advanced and significant tools, but you can get free trials of tools like Logly, which allow you to look at weblog data, look for any entries that have the GCL ID in there to show they come from Google, the Facebook Click ID, Microsoft Click ID, if you're looking at other platforms as well. You can take a look at those user agents. You can note those IPs. There's various tools like Screaming Frog Log Analyzer will also parse and analyze user agents for you and tell you if it's good, if it's bad, and so on. And then you can put those IPs through something like IP Stack or What Is My IP or these various different services and just see, are these data centers that are coming back, am I getting hit with bot activity? And it just gives you that understanding of if the kind of thing that's going on is good or if it's bad. And if it is bad, then you can start taking some actions to actually improve that and reduce that activity across your account. If you are running target CPA, like I mentioned on the previous slide, and you maximize conversions as well, and you really want to keep using that bidding strategy, what we would suggest is make sure all your forms have reCAPTCHA on them. The amount of lead gen forms I see without reCAPTCHA is absolutely ridiculous, and it just attracts bot fills. So put reCAPTCHA on it. You're going to massively, massively cut down the amount of bot fills. You're not going to be paying for bot conversions. You're going to be paying for legit conversions. It's completely free to install. It takes 5 minutes to set up. It's extremely easy, even if you're not particularly technical. Really, really easy to get to grips with. So definitely have that on all of your pages. Amma, I think you have a poll as well. You want to run here?
Yes, yeah. I'm going to let you rest your voice a little bit there, because I know you did well there to not cough your way through it. Second, we got a bit of a technical issue here with my poll system.
Oh,
there we go. Right, okay, I'll get there in the end. Okay, so sorry guys, it's
all right.
not letting me play.
It's okay. It was a pretty biased poll question, I'll say.
It was. Here we go. Right.
You got it? There we go.
Yeah, there we go. Sorry about that. Technical issues. Okay, so should Google be able to overspend your daily budget by 2x? I think we all know what the answers are going to be.
I do feel like it's a loaded question in many ways, but let's see.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Okay, it's not as one-sided as I thought it might be. Just a few more people to answer. Okay, so we've got 10% of people saying yes, it is a useful feature. 75% no, I hate it, which I think we all knew was coming. And the rest, 15%, unsure, and it has its uses. So yeah, it's a bit of a surprise. I thought it was going to be a lot more no, I hate it, but
I would say that if I'm being fair, I would say I wouldn't be necessarily a hard no on this in every circumstance. Like Neil was saying, like, I think there's times when automated bidding and some of these things can be taking, advantage of opportunities maybe you're not seeing in that moment. But I think generally what I see with a lot of agency level accounts that are spending at high levels, you've got a lot of campaigns feeding into a specific budget goal. It's not people's favorite feature because it's a lot of uncertainty. Telling a client, hey, we've got this $100 daily budget set on this campaign, we all agree to that, and now they're getting a daily report where it's spending $150 or $175. that sort of 2x ability is one of the things that makes budgeting really hard. So if you flip to the next slide there, Amar, it's one of the biggest changes definitely that happened in PPC over my 10 or 12 years in it now at this point, maybe longer actually, 40. But it's along that trend of where Google's trying to take as much sort of control over your accounts as they can. And this being able to spend your daily budget 2x over a 30-month threshold causes a lot of problems for customers that are constantly making campaign daily budget changes and resetting that 30 days. So that combined with working on multiple platforms, Facebook, Bing, all these places feeding a budget goal. And that's really what I've focused a lot on with Shape, and the problems we look at is really those budgeting problems and honing in on those. So it's one where it was actually advantageous for our software along the way when Google added that in, because people were looking for more kind of guardrails. We a lot of times describe like budget management software as like a speedometer on Google or a lot of these places. But there's a lot of other ways you can get it done. And for in-house folks that aren't working at the same type of scale as maybe an agency level, there's lots of spreadsheets or scripts that can kind of get you along the way to making sure you avoid any budgeting disasters. So we'll pop through a couple of the pros and cons of those real quick. If you want to flip the next slide, Amar. So pros and cons of script, we've touched on these a little bit, but real just quickly, I mean, what I like about them is that they're free. You can time the email alerts. They're super customizable. There's a lot of resources out there in the PPC world. Niels Roymanch, who's the last link there, I looked up before the call how to say his name. I've seen it for years and never. He's actually got a cool little thing on his website where you can hit an audio and he pronounces it for you. But he's really the master of scripts, and I think if you're new to scripts or looking to see how scripts can help you specifically avoid some of these disasters, he's got a lot of great ones on there. There's a specific link here in the slide that you'll have as a takeaway. But scripts are super flexible, but you need that technical knowledge. If you're not really sure what you're doing in JavaScript, make sure you talk to somebody who is before you press play on some of these scripts. The other way that you can get it done is a simple spreadsheet. I love spreadsheets for a lot of reasons. There's interesting ways now that you can pull in data live into like a Google spreadsheet. We've developed a couple templates there we're linked to down here. PPC Hero has some. Brain Labs has a good sort of just basic Excel template that you can either manually enter some data if you're just working with a few accounts, or do a quick upload of a campaign report, have it feed into these templates. So I think the way we really look at budgeting is what kind of scale are you working at is really going to determine the types of tools you look to use. If you're managing still only 5 to 10 budgets, you can probably get it done with some of these more manual efforts. Monitoring tools, so Data Studio is a big one here now that's gaining more and more traction across PPC. And this is just setting up a report that you can look in on and get a quick eyeball, quick high level view. Is anything crazy spending? Is there a crazy daily spike? But the kind of the cons of using just a monitoring tool is it is just reporting. If something's overspending in the middle of the night, there's no two-way or automation that's going to take care of that for you until you see the report and go make the change. And that kind of leads us into the last level of budget management is maybe some of you agency folks that are working at bigger scale. If you want to flip to the next slide there, Amar. And this is really where software like Shape, Optimizer, Kenshu, Marin might come more into play for you. If you need to make sure automation is on all the time, and if a budget hits its cap in the middle of the night or whenever, even if you're not behind the computer and you need those insurance policies, this is where you might need to step all the way out to budget management software if you're dealing at scale. So if you've got hundreds of budgets that you alert overload in your scripts, and you've kind of reached that stage to where a lot of times it's not like something you can exactly put your finger on, but as an analyst, you just kind of know it. You're kind of getting a feel for like, hey, I can't hold all these accounts in my head anymore. I'm not completely sure what's going on in this market. That's a time when you could be potentially risking some issues going forward if you don't get some things in place. And my big PPC spend disaster kind of builds in to some of these things Neil's about to talk about in terms of like where you're sending your ads, and making sure you're getting the best performance, whereas like maybe spend on its surface isn't really changing, but that performance underneath is.
Thanks very much, John. So just looking at stuff that we see from our internal data. So we manage about $100 million a month of budget here at PPC Protect. And we see within that about 4% of the Google shopping ad spend is going to products that are out of stock, so no one can actually buy them, or is going to broken landing pages. Now, you've probably seen in Google Ads, you will get a notification that there is an error for that page. It's not working. Those notifications are slow. They're not fast to be received. There are scripts that you can use for that, which I'll touch on in a minute, which make the whole process a lot faster. But just relying on Google automatically telling you, you could blow through a day, 2 days, 3 days worth of budget. If you're working with 50 grand, 100 grand a month, that's a lot of money that's going to be going to that page and is going to be completely wasted. Like I say, scripts are great for identifying these. We'll touch on those, and then obviously make your boss or your client or whoever controls you very, very happy when you're avoiding a disaster. If you could jump to the next slide. So in terms of monitoring for broken landing pages, and this would be relevant to any industry, agency, in-house, wherever you are, we would recommend using the link checker script from Google. So Google actually provide this script. Why they provide it as a script and they don't natively build it into Google Ads, I still can't get my head around. I'm sure they will one day, but yeah, at the moment you're going to have to do a bit of digging and find it. So we've got a link in here that you can use, and you can actually adjust how often that runs. So we would suggest running that hourly. So if anything happens to your pages, your web developers go in, they break something and they've not told you about it, within an hour at most, you're going to be informed of that. You're going to be able to pause that campaign, pause that ad, and make sure that you're not wasting any money. If you have an MCC account and you want to run this across all your clients, there's a script specifically for that we've also linked in here. And that's really good if you are an agency in the pitching process with the client as well, because you can raise these issues as other agencies may not be looking out for this. We are, here's how we do it. You're obviously going to be more likely to win that deal and bring that client in. If you have over 20,000 pages, the script won't work. It's a simple way to put it. It'll just time out. It won't work. You'll have to then use the Google Ads API and get a bit more technical with it. It's not too difficult. You'd probably end up looking for a freelance developer or something, but just bear in mind, if you are working at significant scale, you're going to have to use some sort of API connection. Next slide, please. Thank you. So if an item is out of stock, you're probably going to want to stop running ads to it in most circumstances. We've linked a free script here for you to be able to do that. Same with if you have low inventory products. So you might have something that has 2 or 3 items left in stock, and you want to either pause the ads and not run the risk of running out of stock, or maybe you want to even edit those bids. You want to bid less because you're not so bothered about appearing competitive in the auction because you don't have a lot of stock to shift. There's a script in here that can do that for you as well. So scripts are super, super powerful once you get to grips with them. And as a PPC manager or someone who is involved in PPC campaigns at all, it's really worth getting to grips with scripting and how it works, putting aside a day or two to just really understand the fundamentals and the basics of it. And like I say, about price competitive as well. If you have a product that is commoditized, you're only competing with people on price, then you can actually use scripts to turn your ads on and off depending on your price compared to your competitors. So if you want to only display when you're cheaper, then invest your ad spend then, it'll automatically turn on. If your competitors change their prices, increase their prices, and so on, you can monitor all that and automatically adjust your campaigns based on that. So really, really powerful scripts to use, and can have really good impacts within your campaigns. Over to you, John.
Yeah, and I think this slide here is kind of a summary of some of the things we touched on, but I'll jump right into my spend disaster because it flows off that, particularly in broken landing pages. One quick thing I'll note here that I hadn't touched on yet is when you're talking to your clients, make sure you talk to them sometimes about automation limitations that might be within certain types of ads and tied to third parties. So for example, YouTube ads through the API doesn't allow software like ours to change campaign status around pause or enable. So if we see that, oh, you hit your budget on this YouTube campaign, the best we can do is send an alert about that. So being sure you're aware of different abilities based on what type of ads you're serving. Local service ads has different reporting and capabilities through the API as well. So make sure you're aware of that, especially if you're trying out new different types of ads for your clients. On to my spend disaster here. This is just one of the examples when we were talking about the topic for the webinar and what we would look at for going over. This is one that came to mind, is like avoiding these types of PPC spend disasters. So this was years back, but we had a client that redesigned the website. They changed some of the URL structures. They had everything in place. They pushed through the CMS. Maybe a week later, I went into AdWords Editor, didn't do my download first of previous changes to get correct URLs, re-uploaded a couple changes, so that all this ad traffic, about 50,000 in budget per month, was hitting all these 404s. Now, like you said, Neil, like some of these alerts on the 404s were slow. They were even slower back then, especially if you had a pretty solid 404 that still had the navigation of the website, still had some content that was pertinent. So in this case, it was another self-storage client. They went to the 404, but had all these things leading them to find their closest store. And it was a little bit more like the homepage than a 404 in some ways. So we didn't really pick up, there was performance drops, maybe of like 25% on the conversion rates. There was, a little bit less time on site we were sort of seeing from people bouncing, but nothing was super obvious. And it turned out it was because all these ads for like 3 weeks before we figured it out were going to these 404 pages. So still converting, but just lower. And we had no script or anything else in place beyond Google just saying, hey, looks like there's something broken on this landing page. Check it out. We'll keep sending ads to it in the meantime, but because it's still getting clicks and performing well. But it shows why it's important a lot of times to have these checks and balances in place, especially when working at scale and spend can add up quick.
And that didn't go down too well then, did it, John?
Yep, no, that was a lot of tough conversations with bosses and quantifying the loss in leads. And it led our agency to change a lot of practices around what other QA processes do we need in place. We were at a high growth, like a hyper growth stage at that point, adding on a lot of accounts. We had manual systems that were breaking down, and just going through those growing pains of adding software to our stack and more automated systems as we grew. So it was a good lesson learned, but I think shows why it's really important to have a lot of these guardrails we're talking about on your accounts.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, good stuff. Thanks for that, guys. We've slightly run over, not much. I think we did okay. I hope everyone found that useful and kind of really can take something away from it, and hopefully implement some of the tips that Neil and John have given as well. In terms of so what we'll do is, because we have run over, see, I had a number of questions coming in. What we'll do is, I think the best thing, guys, is if we make a note of all these questions and answer them through for people, and we can send them alongside obviously the recording and the presentation, it might be the easiest way to kind of make sure we can get through and answer everyone's questions. Are you happy to do that, guys?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah. Perfect. Good stuff. Right. Okay. Well, thanks again, John. Thank you. You've obviously got the rest of your day ahead of you now. Neil, you can take a well-deserved break and rest that voice. And yes, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll hopefully see you on the next webinar as well.